1. When I was maybe 5 years old, I had solidly outgrown my toddler bed and was in need of some place to sleep, so my father got an old bed frame at an auction. I don't know where the mattress came from. Knowing him, it was the one that was on the bed, wherever he got it. The first night, my mom read me a story and kissed me goodnight as usual. I didn't go to sleep immediately. The new bed was huge compared to my old one. I put my arms all the way out to the side, and they were still on the bed. I put my feet down all the way, couldn't feel the bottom of the bed. I started to slide down under the covers, trying to find the bottom of the bed with my toes. Finally, my toes hit the bottom, and I pushed them out to touch the footboard. Something touched my feet. I pulled them back, but I was a sane and rational kid and assumed it had to be the blankets bunched up down there. So I put my feet back down. Again, it touched my feet. Then it moved. I started screaming bloody murder. My parents came in, checked the room, and finding nothing, assured me it was either the blankets or, worst case scenario, a mouse. But from that night on, every time I put my feet down, something was there. At first just all the way at the bottom, but then it started to come closer. A quarter of the way up the bed, then half, then 3/4. Until if I slept in any position other than curled up at the head of the bed, this thing was there. It grabbed my feet. It moved under the covers. Every time I lifted them, it would vanish. If I put my feet off the side of the bed, I could feel it brushing them. Sometimes it would grab my feet or ankles. Never pull. Never leave a mark. I only vaguely remember those times because they were early on, and I soon stopped putting my feet off the bed and would jump from 3 feet away to get into it. But I know it had fingers, hands, but they didn't feel right. Not cold, just wrong. And it wasn't just me. The same thing happened to all my friends. Sleepovers always ended up moving to the living room after they didn't heed my warnings about the foot of the bed. My parents were no help. After the first few times checking and finding nothing, they assured me it had to be my imagination, and basically gave me instructions on how to deal with a panic attack. We moved, and I thought whatever it was would go away, but it didn't. One night, one of my friends was sleeping over. We were probably 13 or so. She woke me in the middle of the night, saying someone or something had grabbed her foot. I told her not to put her feet down at the bottom or off the sides and went back to sleep. Other friends just said they didn't like the bed, and I didn't push. I knew it sounded crazy to say something was grabbing their feet. Fast forward to when I was around 15. One day I thought, sleeping like this is stupid. I didn't know what was going on, but I had had enough of it. So I put my feet all the way down to the end of the bed. Something touched them. I instinctively pulled them back. No, just no. By that time I was a young punk who broke horses for a living. I wasn't scared of anything, and this was not gonna fly. So I stuck my feet down again. It touched me. I didn't move my feet. It slowly moved up from my toes toward my ankle. Now I was confused. It felt like a hand, but made of cloth, and with no bones. Like the hand of a cloth doll. What the hell was going on? I grabbed it between my feet, a little squishy, but again like a doll. I started to pull it toward the top of the bed. I don't know why I didn't just throw the covers off. I think I wanted to get a good hold of it first. But when I sat up to get my hands down there, it pulled away. I saw it zip back under the blanket and vanish between the mattress and footboard. There was no room for someone to be hiding in it or under the bed. I lost it. 3 a.m. I yanked the mattress and the box spring off and dragged the frame into the old barn where it has sat for the next 20 years. Unfortunately, removing the bed didn't solve the problem. My closet light would come on and the doors began to open on their own at night. They were the kind that size accordion style but would pump off the track and open straight out like wings. My bed was positioned so I couldn't see into the closet with them like that. We tried to fix them again and again, but nothing worked. Even if we couldn't get them off, they popped out at night. The light was a mystery as well, as the switching was being turned and there didn't seem to be any wiring faults. Then one night when the doors opened, and I saw a shadowy figure against a wall. Again, no noise. Screw the noise. I was probably 17 or 18 at the time. I grabbed the toolbox and took the doors down. I emptied the closet. I took the shelves out. I moved my mattresses. I refused to sleep on a raised frame into the closet. Nothing happened. Nothing happened the next night. After a few weeks, I moved my mattresses back. I moved out when I was 20. One of my brothers took that room. A couple years ago, I noticed he had gotten the old bed frame out of the barn and was using it. When I next visited him a few weeks later, the frame was gone. He said every time he went to bed, something grabbed his feet. 2. So the first experience I had at this apartment. My boyfriend left for work, and I was laying in bed still when the door creaked open slightly. I was half expecting to see my boyfriend coming back into the room, opening the door slowly in case I was asleep. However, when I peered through the open crack, nobody was there. None of his roommates were home either. I figured it was air fluctuation from an open window and moved on. The following night, I woke around 2 a.m. to rattling that I thought was coming from the ceiling fan at first. The rattling persisted, got increasingly louder, and then would stop. This pattern continued throughout the night. A few days later, the rattling began again. Still thinking it's a ceiling fan, I rolled over and back to sleep. I woke an hour later to the door creaking open like before. I waited for someone to walk in or say something, but there was nothing. The apartment was quiet again. It made me feel pretty uneasy, and I woke up my boyfriend this time to tell him. I finally calmed down after some time and started to fall asleep when I heard rattling, and when I opened my eyes, the door was shut again. I again woke up my boyfriend because at this point I was scared and confused. We brushed it off eventually, figuring it was my imagination or something. I have a history of sleep paralysis, so I've seen some pretty scary but unreal things from my bed at night. My boyfriend went off to work the next day, and I spent the morning cleaning. Some items from previous tenants have been left in the closets of each of the rooms. It's a tourist area, so seasonal employees and short-term stays are always coming and going, leaving things behind for the next person. I was reorganizing the linen closet, which had some pretty outdated bedding, when some of the items fell on a folded comforter. I wish I was making this up because it seems so unreal and eerie. Of the items wrapped in this comforter, there was a Bible and an angel figurine, also some Tuscany vineyard-themed wall decorations. I became pretty spooked considering in the past few events I wrapped them back up and put them in the closet where I found them. I told my boyfriend and our friends about this that night. The name Shelby was written in the Bible, so I was wondering if any of them knew a Shelby. Nobody had. Out of curiosity, they removed the Bible and flipped through its contents. Highlighted scripture was found only in the Old Testament, highlighting the punishment for sins. My boyfriend was reading these highlights to us while I sat at a table near our bedroom door with another girl from the apartment. I heard a quick rattle of our door again, and when I looked up, I could see the other girl that was facing the door had seen what I had heard. We stepped away from the door and stared in disbelief. "Did you see it rattle too?" she asked. I told her no, but I have been hearing that sound for the past week. That was 5 days ago. Last night my boyfriend woke me up this time to ask if the noise he's hearing is what I've been hearing. I listened for a second, and then came the incessant rattling of the doorknob. It's getting colder here, so we've been keeping our windows shut at night. We're running out of explanations. He got minimal sleep as the door rattled off and on all night again, and it frightened him quite a bit. We messed with the handle ourselves to recreate the sound, and it's definitely our bedroom doorknob. It has the whole apartment pretty spooked, honestly. I'm just glad all it's messing with is our door. 3. I've had a number of encounters with a ghost over the years, though they aren't always the same. The first time I encountered the ghost was about 8-ish years ago. I remember it very vividly. It was Christmas Eve and I was staying at my sister's house. She has kids, and our parents were staying there as well. So all of the spare bedrooms were full, and I ended up sleeping in the basement. This wasn't some dark, scary dungeon, though the basement wasn't completely finished. It was still pretty nice, and I slept on a couch with blankets and pillows. I think it was sometime around midnight when someone came down the stairs. It awoke me immediately, and there was just enough light coming in through those little basement windows that I could definitely see the outline of a person, but not enough to really make out any details. Everything was pretty much shades of grey. At this point I assume it's my brother-in-law. I came down the stairs and turned to look at his shelf so that his back was to me. The shelf had household goods and pantry-type stuff, cans of food, paper towels, etc. I was going to say something when I suddenly was overcome with a sense of dread. Something just hit me that felt like this isn't right, and I was completely frozen. After a few seconds, it simply turned and went back up the stairs. The next morning, I asked everyone who came downstairs last night, and absolutely everyone denied it. There was no sense of it being a joke, no reason for anyone to lie. It later occurred to me that if someone had come down to find something on the shelf, there's no way they could have seen what they were looking at. It was too dark. They didn't take anything anyway, just walked back upstairs. There are two things I would like to note. First, could it have been family? Sure. I don't know why they would lie about it, and we don't have any sleepwalkers that I know of. But it's possible, even though I don't think it likely. Secondly, this wasn't sleep paralysis. I was 100% awake, my body was capable of movement, and my mind was telling me to stay perfectly still. I've had a couple of other encounters in the intervening years, but I honestly don't recall the details. Fast forward to now. I've had 2 encounters within the past week. Both times I've heard something walking in my apartment in the middle of the night. In both cases, the sound woke me up. The first time I simply woke up and the sound stopped. I stayed in bed and listened and eventually just fell back asleep. The second time it sounded like someone was walking right next to my bed, and I again woke up with that overwhelming sense of dread. It startled me so much and sounded so close that I actually overcame the initial fear and jumped out of bed and turned on the light. I ended up checking my entire apartment to make sure someone hadn't broken in, but all the doors were locked, all the windows closed. Honestly, I doubt anyone could break in without tripping over something. I also spent like 10 minutes moving things around my bed and nightstand to see if I could recreate the sound, but couldn't. It's kind of weird because I honestly believe that whoever or whatever it is benign, but for whatever reason gives off an aura of complete terror. I've also always felt on some instinctive level that it's been the same entity. I don't think it really wants anything. I don't think it even intends to be scary. Just for whatever reason, it occasionally shows up and then leaves. 4. I used to watch this show called Doctor Who. I'm sure some of you also did as kids. There's this one episode that still haunts me to this day, and I can't make it stop. For those curious, it's in Season 3, and it's called Blink. The episode itself does not haunt me as much as it used to. A lot of you might be asking why it haunted me as a kid. I'll illustrate the episode for you without spoiling. The story is about these things called the Weeping Angels, who can only move when people aren't looking at them. In order to feed, they drain temporal energy. So what they do is they touch people and send them back into the past, and they gobble up all the remaining years that person would have lived in the present. Pretty horrifying, I know. Also pretty cool. But it's not weeping angels that have been haunting me. My parents went out with my little brother to a water park. This was when I was 14, I'm 17 now. During the weekend, which meant I had to stay home and take care of my dog. Simple things such as refilling his water and taking him out. The water park they went to is a long trip from our house, I'd say about 1 hour, 30 minutes at least. So I was alone for the day. It was around 10 p.m. and I was just watching YouTube in my room. I made sure everything was locked and my dog was asleep. Around 11:30, I remembered that I had to take my dog out once more so he doesn't take a piss everywhere when my family is sleeping. We have a pretty big yard, so my dog likes to take his sweet time. Once he finished his thing, I let him back inside. I thought to myself, man, I didn't see nothing, but I swear I felt like someone was watching me. Do you ever get a feeling you're being watched even though you don't see the person? I honestly, for a moment, felt like I was in a horror movie. So about 15 minutes passes and I get a text from my parents saying they are stuck in traffic and will be home in about 1 hour. Didn't bother me much. Around 12:30 my dog was asleep and I was just chilling in my room doing my thing. 10 minutes go by. Out of the blue my dog just starts barking and he won't stop. Do you know what is scary about this? My dog never barks, not even when a person passes. He is, I'd say, as calm as a dog can really get. That was very strange. He rarely even reacts like that to other animals. I was gonna ignore him, but I didn't want the neighbors reporting anything, so I went to check what was up, and where my dog was. Sitting near the window, growling at whatever was outside. I looked out and I couldn't see anything, so I wasn't sure what could have startled him. And there was absolutely no way I was going outside to check it out. He stopped growling, so I went to the bathroom. As I was walking out, I heard my doorbell ring. When I tell you I was frightened, I literally could not balance on my feet. I just suddenly told myself that it's probably my parents. But that was also weird. Wouldn't they say something? Also, why would they ring the doorbell if they can just unlock it? There were many things wrong in that moment. I went to my room and looked out of my window. The reason for that is because I can see the front yard. I locked my door and put a chair as a barricade. But when I scanned the front yard, I didn't see anything. I also scanned the backyard and also nothing. It couldn't have been a prank because I know a lot of people from my school that live near me. I called my parents, but they didn't answer. I didn't feel like calling 911 because what the fuck was I supposed to say? Hey, my dog started barking randomly and someone rang the doorbell, but I don't know who it is. So I decided to take it easy. I drank some water and calmed myself down. I told myself that this only happens in horror movies and that I'd be fine. I was silent for at least 10 minutes. Then my dog started to bark again. That's the moment that I felt like I shit my pants. I crawled to the window in case someone was expecting me and slowly scanned the front porch and the street. Again, nothing. I make sure to look once more, and that's when I saw a man across the street standing. I couldn't make out who it was. I quickly grabbed my phone and tried to do that thing where you zoom in your camera, but that didn't work. The man didn't move, and he sure did not look familiar. But his hands were covering his face, and he was hiding it. And I'm no little kid, but my mind instantly thought, weeping angel. That's what they look like. They always hide their faces, because they can't even look at each other. I thought I was seeing things. Being the person who watches so many horror films, I wasn't surprised. I felt kind of relieved because I just assumed it was a random guy. I closed the blinds and tried to fall asleep. I thought to myself, out of all people, why did my dog bark at him? I had this uneasy feeling, so I decided to check one more time. I tried to not make any noise, and slowly creeped to the window. I looked back at the same spot, and the man wasn't there anymore. I stood by the window for a whole minute. I even laughed it out. I glanced back, and my smile instantly went down. When I tell you I was frightened, I mean it. My body felt extremely cold. The man was now closer. Instead of being across the street, he now was standing on the sidewalk in front of my house. His hands were covering his face. He didn't move. Not even a second. I blinked. He changed his location and is now in the yard. But this time, his hands are open. Open as if someone was opening up for a hug. His face was pale, no emotion, no movement. I felt a tear roll down my face. I fell on my knees and started shaking. I was in the same position for about 20 minutes. All of a sudden, I hear the door unlock, and it's my parents and my brother. They were extremely confused why my face looked so wet. I told them I saw someone in our yard, and at first they didn't believe me, but I eventually convinced them to get the police to search around. They obviously found nothing. I described to my parents what I saw, but they said it's probably because I watched too many scary movies. 3 weeks pass. I was in school, sitting in class on the highest floor near a window. I was dozing off because who wants to sit there and listen to a history teacher talk for 2 hours? All of a sudden, I get the same feeling I had 3 weeks earlier. I felt cold, uneasy. I looked around my class and everything seemed normal. My brain told me to look outside, and I did. In the middle of the gravel field, there he was, the same man, standing, hands covering his face. I blink for a second and he moves, this time closer. I didn't want to act as if I was a weirdo, so I whispered to the person next to me and asked if they saw something on the field. They said no. I asked for another person behind me and the same answer. Why am I still able to see him, but not everyone else? 5. I'd like to share an event that still gives me goosebumps until this day. It happened when I was like 6 or 7 years old. To be clear, I don't think it was just my imagination playing with me. My family and I came back late at night from a family gathering. Everybody went to sleep since it was late. To be clear, back then I had a room in the basement. Next to my room was my sister's room, and next to her room was my parents' bedroom. If you want to go through the parents' bedroom, you gotta go through my sister's room. Then there's a tiny floor, which leads to my room as well as a bathroom and a stairway. My room also leads to our main floor after you open the door. There is a stairway going up. So just as I was getting comfy, I've heard strange noises from my parents' bedrooms, like something slowly approaching. But not like steps or so, but like something on wheels. I heard it say something that I didn't understand. I turned in a robotic kind of way. I was already freaked out and I didn't know if I should turn the light off or on. I left it on. It was really close, and as every kid, I pulled my blanket over my head. The thing stopped before my bed and said, "So." At this point, I was absolutely terrified, and I couldn't move because I was death scared. I gathered my courage and watched what was standing there, just watching me. I think it was a witch just watching me. You might think that sounds stupid now, or that it was just the imagination of a child. But hear me out. I live in Germany, and my region is famous for Walpurgisnacht. So basically all witches meet up at this place on the Hexentanzplatz and dance with the devil. So why is this important, you might ask? My aunt once gave my family a witch. It's sort of like a doll that you can hang anywhere, and it looks like a witch is floating on a broomstick. Anyways, this witch is still there, hanging directly before you enter my old room under the stairway I mentioned earlier. She also looks really scary. So now it's getting crazy. My sister once slept in my room since we had guests, and I slept by my mom and dad. After that night, my sister told me that she saw some sort of witch. My sister is 5 years older than me. It could be that she was scared, but I've told her about my encounter before, and she was scared after that. Maybe she just imagined all of this. Her reaction the next morning was real. She was really scared. Now, about 10 years later, after that incident, we still have no clue what we encountered there. We both aren't skeptics. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 290. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and share the video with a friend or a family member. Okay, let's see, Friday, when this went up originally. Let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... Right, now, what is the first horror movie that you remember seeing? Now, my parents allowed me to watch horror movies when I was quite young, probably in single digits. And we're going back a ways here, but the first horror movie that I remember seeing, well, that's tough. This may not be exact, but I'm going to go with a movie called Fiend. It was made in 1980. It was a kind of a B-movie type of film. And I personally don't recognize any of the names of the people in it. Let's see, Don Liefert, Elaine White, Richard Nelson. No, I don't recognize any of them. But it's a spooky movie about this spirit that enters a cemetery, and it possesses the grave of this recently deceased man. And it rises and takes on a life. But it has to absorb energy from the living in order to keep itself young and healthy. Guy also has a big mustache, like a big, thick mustache. It was released in 1980-something, but I'm sure it was filmed in the 70s. But what are yours, your earliest memories of a horror movie? Let me know what you think in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.